Welcome to our Meet the Experts Film Composers panel. We're joined here by Terence Blanchard from The Five Bloods, Benjamin Wallfisch from The Invisible Man, Thomas Newman from Let Them All Talk, Stephen Price from Over the Moon, and Bruno Coulais from Wolfwalkers. Thank you all for being here. First, I just want to know, when did you all know you wanted to write music? Stephen, let's start with you.
I can't really remember doing much else. This is that I got a theory that my development froze around about 5 years old, because I just used to, there were instruments around the house, and so it seemed a very natural thing to me to do, to fiddle around with them and you know, make things up. And gradually I pieced together. It took me a long time to piece together. You could do living, but yeah, it always seemed like what a fun thing to do with your life, you know.
That's a weird question to answer. Being from New Orleans, man, it's like, it's a weird thing to deal with because, you hear music all the time. So, it's hard to kind of pinpoint it, because I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to play football, and I was in the marching band, and I'll never forget, we had to play at the, what we call Bayou Classic, is when Southern University and Grambling meet. And man, we were right at the entrance where Grambling's football team was coming onto the field. And when I saw them big old dudes, I was like, no, let me go over here. I said, man, I think I'm going to do it. This horn looks really, really attractive to me right now. But it started early for me. I mean, I was getting theory lessons when I was 12 years old from a neighbor who was teaching me piano lessons. She used to give me theory and ear training when I was a kid, I didn't understand it. I hated it every Saturday. I felt like the weird kid walking off to lessons while everybody else was out in the street playing football or playing baseball or doing something else. But my parents, my father was in the opera. My mom's sister taught piano and voice. My grandfather played the guitar. So, there was always music in the house. So I'm kind of like Steven. It was just kind of like always there.
Yeah, it's crazy what happens when you're surrounded by music, just whether it's on records or being played, like in those very early years. It's almost like it's hard to pinpoint the exact moment. I was lucky enough to grow up in a household with two musician parents. My dad's a cellist, was a violinist, and my grandpa Peter was a concert pianist, and he probably had the biggest impact on me as a kid. We'd always go over to my grandparents' place every weekend, and he would always make a point of just putting me on his knee, age 2, and just putting my hands on the keyboard. And something I remember so distinctly was him and my dad had a duo of cello and piano, and they would rehearse, and I would literally just sit under the piano and just absorb the feeling, that not just in your ears, but in your body too, the vibrations of that. And so for me, music has always been this kind of family. It's synonymous with family and sort of I just annoyed my piano teachers, basically. I was given all these exercises to do and things to learn, and I just was kind of good. And I'd be, that's really interesting. And I have no idea why it's interesting, but I'd spend like a couple of hours just figuring out, like, what if you change this note or this note, and then you start improvising, and that's what I would do. And to this day, I can't really play arpeggios on my left hand because I never practiced that stuff. But it's that kind of joy of discovery and making happy accidents, and also my parents were just really generous in that they, when I was about 12, they bought me my first little computer sequencer and very basic setup. And I was the ultimate geek. I just spent all my days in my bedroom playing with this kit. So yeah, it's like, I completely agree with you guys. It's those happy coincidences as a child.
I come from a musical family myself, so there's music all around, starting from when I was incredibly young, and I took piano and violin, but never thought much of my talents and certainly not my ability to play. There was just a moment, I remember someone my age was writing poetry, and it had never occurred to me, considering I'd been from this family, that someone my age could be, creative, and it kind of got me started, and I just kind of went from there. But I don't think I ever wanted to go into music, because the Newman family was a daunting family to kind of, be from. Randy Newman, just this critical darling, and my dad Alfred, and all that. So I kind of climbed up a wall by my fingernails, and slightly shocked that I made it to the top of the wall, not to the top, but the top of the wall. But I love it. I just sure love, yeah, the issue of being imaginative, of just kind of imagining things. This non-quantifiable thing really appeals to me in a world that seems like it's trying all the time to quantify. It really strikes me as a way to be, myself, I suppose, which can be tough.
Yeah.
Young, I think very young. I wanted to write music and to live with music. I hesitated between the football and the music, and now I have chosen music. No, very young, very young. I think it was very bad, but I have a lot of brothers, sisters. It was really very noisy at home. So I used to isolate me and write music in my head. And now it's very precious because I'm very lazy, and I can, if I have an idea, I can write the music anywhere. Yes.
Well, music is often one of the last components of a film, but if you're on board a film early on, do you prefer to write from the script, or do you like to wait until you have scenes?
Well, I prefer to discover the real picture. I don't like too much to read the script because the narration is not so important for me. I think the music has to reveal the secret part of a film, and it's not interesting to double the story of dialogues, what say the characters. So the script, no, I'm ashamed, but I don't like reading script, and I need to, because for me, it exists a very strong connection between the light of the film and the tonalities with the orchestration, the density of the picture and the density of the music. So I need to discover the real picture, the real light, the colors. And the narration is not important. It's a nightmare when a director asks me to explain the story of the film. Story in the life and in the film is not are not important for me. But the secret where the things that are not explained but by the dialogues of the narration, I think it's more important. But it's very subjective,
I mean, I can say something which is, I think a real value for a director is that you're a fresh set of ears, fresh set of eyes. If you start early with the script, oftentimes you're helpful, but you're just going to go through this process where a director, writer is still discovering. You may get on board with certain elements that are discarded, and I think you can be less helpful later on when I think, someone looking at something for the first time or nearly the first time can just be more invigorated. So I think I prefer to wait for a film too, because oftentimes the script can be misleading.
Yeah,
I totally agree. When I played with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, one of the things he used to hate was when guys would come on the show and read down the show from sheet music. He would always say, listen, that's just a roadmap. The music is not there. That's just a guide for us to create. And that's the way that I look at scripts. I look at scripts as just a guide. I mean, I remember working on a film with Spike. I think it was the Summer of Sam. I got so excited, man. I started writing this music based on the script and all of this stuff. And then there was this one scene that I'd read between Miroslav Vino and John Leguizamo. and they're having this argument, and I was trying to think of some thematic thing to write for them, and I was coming up with this thing, and then when Spike shot the scene, man, she gets out of the car in the middle of the argument, and Spike shot the empty seat in the car. You know what I mean? And I'm writing music, and I'm like, well, whoa, I didn't see that coming. That wasn't in the script. You know what I mean? And the other part of it too is that, you know, a lot of times when you're writing to a script, you're writing your movie. You know, you're creating your own movie. You're not seeing what the director is seeing. You're not dealing with the timing of the actors, how they're delivering the lines, the type of accents, the type of, you know, where they're putting the emphasis on certain words in the dialogue. You know, all of those things are important. And then let's not even talk about the editing. You know, when the editor starts to put it all together, man, then it turns into something totally different as well. And those guys are just like us. You know, they get into a room and they may have an idea from a script, but when they get into a room and everything that they've cut, things start to change. And they, like Tom said, you know, you may have spent all your time, man, I really think this scene is going to work, and then the scene is not there.
Yeah.
You know, and then the whole pace of the film can change. You know, I've worked on films, man. When you read the script, you get a sense of the film kind of just like moving along at a medium kind of pace, and then when you get to film, it kind of just like moves off at a faster pace. And so now I read the scripts just to get an idea of what the story is, you know, but literally I try to wait and see something, because, you know, like Bruno was saying, you know, the colors, the look of it, all of that stuff, like it's gonna indicate something in your brain and in your heart to discover what it is that you need to do for the score.
So true. Yeah, they're great conversation starters. Like I'd never worked with Lee before, and when he reached out with The Invisible Man, the first thing was the script, and it just meant that when we actually met, we had something to talk about and bounce ideas off it. But beyond that, I love like both ends of the extremes. Like when you're on very early, you get to go to the set and actually watch the actors do their work and see like their process, and that can be really informative too. But sometimes, I mean, again, with Invisible Man, I had about 5 weeks to do the score, and that was just so exciting because there was no time to kind of have all those looking inward to the conversations. You just took the film exactly where it was with everything Terence is saying, and Bruno too, this sense that all of these elements that come together that have to inform what you write, the rhythm of the cut, the shading of the lighting, all the things which you can't really put your finger on, but they just inspire a tone, inspire a feeling. None of that can come from what's on the page. And so, yeah, it's like read it so you can have a useful conversation at the beginning, but then kind of forget it and see what actually comes on the screen.
You know, a question I would love to ask composers: do you correlate sound with color?
Yes.
Literally with color?
Yeah.
Synesthesia kind of a thing, or?
Well, I mean, like, you know, like sometimes if you see like a bright yellow or a certain type of hue, does it dictate a certain kind of sound in your brain?
Absolutely.
Does it trigger like a certain melody, right?
I think that's the key to this whole conversation. I mean, every time I've ever been asked to come on a film really super early, and I've done a lot of music, I don't think it's ever worked for that reason, because as soon as you put it up against the screen, you know, it could be the way that the performers are moving or whatever, but often it is the light, it's the way they've shot it, it's the whole color of the scene suddenly kicks out the entire palette that you've thought, you know, from the scripts was going to be perfect. So yeah, that's a massive influence.
Lastly, a lot of people listen to music and scores while they work, and I'm assuming you guys can't really do that because you're writing music, but is there any score that I guess gets you in the mood to write?
Thomas Newman. Thomas Newman. I was so happy to meet this dude. I told him, I said, man, if there's anything I ever write in any of my films that sound remotely like yours, it is totally by coincidence. There is no plagiarism going on here. Are you kidding me, man? When I first got in this business, man, and I heard the Shawshank Redemption, I was like, "What the hell is that?" I listened to other scores, obviously. You know, I checked out other things, but there was just something. I think I told Thomas this one time. So you know, he knows. Man, I spent like a day trying to figure out the elements to just a pad he used in the scene. And I was like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, man, I've counted like 7 elements. I'm like, no, dude, you didn't put like 7. Really? Oh my God. And it's funny now, you know, because like here in my home studio here in New Orleans, you got to climb up the steps to come to my studio. So, you know, like most of us, we have posters of our work, you know. So when you go down the steps, right, as soon the thing you see right in front of you is a poster of Shawshank Redemption. So a lot of times my friends come over, they go, man, you did all of this? And I go, yeah, these are films I worked on. And when they go down and stuff, you did Shawshank Redemption? I'm like, no, I didn't do that one, bro. No.
I'm just a Thomas Newman fan, that's all.
Oh my! I'm sorry.
That is so kind of you to say. Truly, thank you.
No, that was just teed up for me, dude. I just had to give that up. Bro. Come on, man. Anybody who knows me knows. You know, I told Thomas this too, man. The Jack Whittemore scene in Shawshank Redemption, I picked that thing apart. You know, and listen, I'll give up the credit. Well, I'll tell you who I steal from. You know what I mean. I'm an equal opportunist when it comes to plagiarism. You know. Now I don't try to write like Tom. That's the thing. I'm just fascinated by what it is that he does, because you know what Tom did and what he clued me in on early in my career was, because you know a lot of people there's certain people who are purists who just want to write for acoustic instruments, right? And then there are other guys who are just synth guys, right? And what Thomas clued me in on very early in my career was, no, you use each one of them for the strengths that they can bring to the project, you know? Well, no, you didn't tell me that, but that's what I surmised from what it is that you were doing, you know what I mean? And then when I watched how you worked with the percussionists and how you would allow guys to play and do things, and I said, you know, that makes so much sense. And then it just started to click for me about not trying to. I've done the same thing in my jazz career. You know what I mean? I try to learn from the people that I admire, but then not try to emulate them, but see how they do things and say, okay, well, how does that work for me? You know? So I've taken those ideas and saying, okay, well, now let me learn a little bit more about programming. Let me learn a little bit more about how to deal with Pro Tools and bring guys in and let them play. And how can I take those elements and use them as, you know, like little clips here and there to kind of, because one of the things that always amazed me about what he does is how, and I don't know how to explain this, but sometimes you can hear something Tom does, and then it starts off with a certain type of emotion right at the beginning of the cut, but it sounds like it's in the middle of the cut. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. And what I found out is, you know, sometimes he's doing these things with musicians that he's recorded. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I just, listen, man, I take from all along the way, but he was one of the first guys, for sure.
Tommy, what about you?
What about me? Did you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do I listen to things? Mm-hmm. You know, I tend not to listen that much. I mean, my listening is fairly eclectic. I think I listened a lot early on, and I think always when I'd be in a car, I'd listen to the radio. If I was working on a movie, I'd say, well, what if this piece of music that I just happened to be hearing was against this image? And I would do things like that, and it would point me towards color and phrase, shape, vocabulary, any of those things. But in terms of saying, oh my God, Bernard Herrmann, I mean, I could definitely go, yeah. I mean, there's so many composers that I love, but I find that that's slightly daunting to me as a creative person myself. I don't want to get lost. I think it's easy for me to get lost in a kind of creative force of other people. I tend to kind of be knocked over pretty easily because oftentimes it's so forceful. So I may tiptoe around that and just try to find my own ways into things. as opposed to find influence?
Just in terms of film music, you know, I'm a child of the 80s, so you know my earliest memories are going to see E.T. with my parents, or you know Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Back to the Future was my first VHS tape, right? So we would watch that thousands of times. But I mean, nowadays I'm probably less likely to listen to film music away from the theatre. You know, I'm much more likely to listen to whatever's on the radio, or you know, old Bob Dylan things, and it all kind of influences everything, you know. So I might hear a little phrasing of the way someone sings something, and it will just trigger a little thought, totally the style I'm working in. But kind of similar to what Tom was saying, it all just becomes part of this thing as you're thinking about a project. Anything can trigger anything, really. So it's just I like just being around lots of music, and there's always something that comes out of it, like a little chord sequence or something that you'll just trigger that thing in your head that makes you think this something like that might apply here, or you know, it just leads you off on a path. So that's most of my listening nowadays.
Yeah, Steve and I have something in common, which we're both ET nuts. One of the us is like, "What's your favorite score?" We both answer ET. And I have a sign.
It's a great
Great score.
Well, it's and I have my wife for our wedding gift that she gave me. She managed to somehow convince. I don't know how she did it, but I have a signed album of the original ET vinyl, which I completely tore out. And it's the first thing I see every time I walk in my studio as a sort of reminder of why, and that love and that kind of awe, which I remember feeling as a kid, and I still feel just that kind of like a hunger to try and understand something which is you'll never quite be able to achieve, but you can aspire to. But in terms of listening when I'm writing, I can't listen to music when I'm in the middle of a score. Much as what Tom was saying, it's like, because I'm very quickly like blown away by something, or like I'm sucked into it, and I kind of want to keep the storytelling kind of contained. What I do listen to though a lot is just for fun is electronic music, mostly because like really experimental, like aggressive dance music, EDM stuff. You know, for when I'm working out, but also just for the production, because those guys are monsters when it comes to pushing the boundaries of actual sound production, music production, and I'm always trying to listen, like, what techniques are they using, and how can I bring that into something I'm working on, even if it's orchestral. But I'm a big podcast guy. I'm always listening to podcasts.
And listen, let me just say this. I had to do that for Tom because I'm a big Tom Newman fan, always have been, and he knows that. I always embarrass him when I'm around him. But literally, and I think the reason why I do that is because when I start working on a project, I'm like you guys. I try to find inspiration from the project, and I think that's what blows me away about Tom. You know, in the midst of all of the other things that I used to hear when I first got in this business, he had such a unique approach. That's what I was trying to find for myself. And one of the things that I teach my students all the time, you got to learn your craft as a composer. You know what I mean? You want to be able to. I remember my first composition, my second composition teacher, his name was Hale Smith, great composer. He kept telling me, he says, "Man, it sounds like you're trying to be able to control this amount of space without having the ability to control this amount of space." So I remember working at my craft and being able to do that. And then I said, you know, that enabled me to be able to take any idea and blow it up into anything. So when I'm working on projects now, I'm starting a new project now with a very great director. And one of the things that I'm trying to do now is just literally take the inspiration from what's on the screen. And my attempt at learning more about sound design and everything is really starting to inform how I approach it, because now I'm not just going to that palette of sounds that I rely on. You know what I mean? I'm actually trying to craft things, not only sounds, but percussive sounds, percussion instruments and melodic instruments, and and in the process of only using those things, it's forcing me to say, okay, well, you can't write this way. You need to come at it this way. And it's allowing me to grow, which I love as an artist, right? But also craft something that's uniquely written for this particular project, which is something that I wouldn't have written for something else, you know? So that's really what it is. And I think what we're all talking about is trust. You know, I had a conversation with the great Dr. Cornel West, man. We were talking about music and creativity, and he said something about jazz musicians that I think pertains to us too. He says jazz musicians always step out on nothing expecting something. And I think that's what it is that we do. We just step out there, you know, and then we allow it to unfold in front of our eyes, you know, but you got to have faith that something is there.
And courage too.
Yeah.
Bruno, what about you? Is there anything you like to listen to?
When I start a project, I try to not listen too much music. If, for example, if I listen a good, very good music of Thomas, for example, I would be afraid to be influenced and to compose a music moins bonne.
A bad copy.
A bad copy of. No, I try to. I think it's probably very difficult to start a new. When I was young and when I had I've made I think 4 or 5 music for movies. I thought that I was able. Now I know exactly what to do for the next one. But the next one, it was for the next one. Definitively, it was impossible to repeat the experiments of the last one. So when I start, I'm absolutely lost. I don't know what to do. I forget how writing music. So I don't stay in my office waiting the inspiration. I can go to exhibitions, for example, and suddenly an idea comes and I can start the process. But I try not to listen to much music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's difficult for me to explain my mind in English, but it's difficult.
Well, it was great speaking with all of you. Thank you so much for your time and your patience. Congratulations on all your films, and have a great day.